Fala pessoal, tudo bom? Trevor aqui e hoje uma entrevista mais do que especial. Tive a oportunidade de falar com Dan Spitz, mundialmente conhecido como um dos membros fundadores da lendária banda Anthrax, que ajudou a moldar e dar nascimento ao Thrash Metal. O Anthrax sempre se destacou pela musicalidade, músicas tecnicamente elaboradas e complexas, oferecendo algo totalmente único e diferenciado dentro desse gênero do Thrash Metal. Isso se deve muito à guitarra de Dan Spitz. Mas, como vocês vão ver hoje na entrevista, ele ainda traz para a Relojoaria toda a atitude e inspiração que fez que Anthrax fosse realmente uma das maiores bandas do mundo. Pessoal, por favor, assinem o canal, compartilhem o vídeo, deixem seu like, curte a entrevista aí.
Yeah, appreciate it. So,
perfect, man.
So yeah, and you mentioned in our brief email exchange that you came to Brazil to play a few times. What do you remember? Do you have any good memories from Brazil? What?
Oh yeah, sure. I remember the first time in Rio. I think we were staying right on the strip there, the typical thing you would do the first time you're there, right? And we went, the first thing, of course, they take us to the all-you-can-eat steakhouses, with the stop-and-go cards and all that, the typical touristy kind of things you would do, And we were just blown away. We just loved it there. It was really, really an intense place to be, And I really enjoyed playing there because the crowds at that point in time in the 80s and 90s they would just, if they could rip down a stadium, they would rip down the stadium. I mean, it was we were fresh, It was the first time in the whole world people saw any kind of music that us and Metallica, Slayer, and Megadeth had invented. It was fierce. It was faster than all other music in heavy metal. And there was no internet. There was no cell phones. So the humanness in the music fans hungered for what they saw in magazines, and especially hard to reach places where no other normal bands would go. And at that point, not everyone came to South America. My friends in Iron Maiden said, "You got to go." They were our mentors for all of us. They were the ones that went to Russia when no one would go to Russia back then. So we did the same thing. So the hunger that was there helps to feed us, and when we hit the stage there, we were just like, wow, like these guys are insane, and that's, the whole Rock in Rio thing, it was exploding at that point in time. And we really, really enjoyed being there. Every time we went, it was just incredible.
Yeah. No, Brazil, it does have, very strong, solid heavy metal, and back in the 80s, 90s, thrash metal following. But I would imagine that now your days are quite different from your days back in Anthrax. So Can you just, briefly, what is a typical day like for you now? Because, and I also wanted to ask, but, so do you work on your own? You got a team working for you? Being an independent watchmaker, how far do you take that into your work every day?
So for many, many years, I've headed up watchmaking companies, some of the biggest in the world, and all their teams of what's called complicated watch rooms, where we work on the most complicated timepieces, pretty much, that company would have, we could say, in the world, but that company would have. So I headed up Chopard for North and South America and all their watchmakers, and I created all their courses for the watchmakers, all the training courses, and I'm an instructor as well. I'm a teacher. Previous to that, I graduated many schools in America, watchmaking schools, and then I went to Switzerland to go to school in Switzerland at this prestigious school there called Wosta, and it is a school for complications. And I graduated from that, and then I had a few of my own service centers, meaning repair. When your Rolex breaks, I have my own service center, and I would repair those. I worked my way through the years through all that to what I was just discussing, where I was heading up many companies. Then I branched out on my own, started making parts for vintage watches. The parts were no longer available. Kind of like if you have an old car, there's no more parts for that car available, that the car company's out of business or whatever it may be. someone has to manufacture those parts. It's the same in the timepieces. If they're worth a lot of money, then it's worth my time to take raw metal, and go in my workshop and get the machines that are necessary, these precision Swiss machines, to make gears, pinions, parts, and bring back what would never have been able to tick again. Repair those watches for auction houses, for companies, for museums, some incredible pieces. And now I parlayed that into what's called independent watchmaking, which is basically thrash metal in watchmaking. Through the years, in luxury watchmaking, or high tier watchmaking, we call it, big brands, name brands, decided they would not sell parts to watchmakers, even though someone like me has the highest schooling credentials in the world. So certain brands just said, no, we want to repair them at our and make all the money. So this forced a lot of watchmakers around the world to say, oh, what are we going to do to survive? And they started making their own watches. And it became what's called independent watchmaking, meaning you slowly start finding used, old, vintage machines from Switzerland, factories, now that they've moved to CNC. The watches that were made in the 40s, 50s, and 60s were done on precision lathes, Swiss milling machines by hand. And we would acquire those machines, restore them, and make our own workshop, a mini manufacturing plant. Some people like myself, I work completely alone. I'm crazy. I do everything by myself, meaning from raw metal, I produce a timepiece, meaning all the gears, the plates, everything that makes it run, I do by myself, alone. And it's taken many years to acquire all these crazy machines. And that's what independent watchmaking is. So I represent my country. So it's not just Switzerland producing watches. We're the greatest watches in the world, which is not the truth. American pocket watches were the best in the world. So we're all around the world. There's Japanese independence. We were speaking before we started here about Russian independence. And independence means not only can I make all the crap in my place here, but it's my designs. Independence is not a corporate boardroom and a branding where we're just serving to sell as many timepieces as possible to the vultures who would only want to watch with a blue dial, and that sells more, so we're only going to make watches with blue dials. It's the opposite. None of us need to have a watch anymore. We have the time on our phone. We have the time in our house on our microwaves. We have it everywhere. So what I do, and what watchmaking at the highest tier has transcended to, is micromechanical art. So not all watches have a dial. Now we can put all the gears and shit on the front. You can see what it takes for us to really be these crazy micromechanics. And it enables us as independents to just make those mechanics. Basically, we're making it for ourselves, just like in the beginning days of thrash metal, right? No record company would sign us or Metallica or Slayer or Megadeth. They thought we sounded like when you flush the toilet, But that's what they actually told us. That's what it sounded like. So they wouldn't sign us back then. So we became an independent music band. I just found the money to get a van and found people that believed in us, managers that weren't normal managers, and we started, independent record labels. Okay, you all know that if you're musicians. There was none of that previous to Metallica, Slayer. There was none of that. You had to have a major label. So it's the same exact thing. You find people who believe in you, believe in your unique art, and you don't listen to the people who tell you your music sounds like when you flush the fucking toilet. It's the same thing in independent watchmaking. My watch might not appeal to the masses, and that's not the point. It's for me. It just so happens other people love my mechanics and my art, and what I do is no different than a painter. That's independent watchmaking. That's what I do now. And I have a big facility. My whole home is transcended. I have on the other side of the home is a full machine shop with some crazy massive machines. I went to school for CNC. And then this is my clean room back here where I assemble, and all the smaller lathes and finishing machines are here. And then there's a dirty room over there in the back where I mess with fire, all kinds of cool fire stuff, and chemicals and crazy stuff in there.
I think when you talk about something that art is involved, it's really hard because it's commercial. At the end of the day, there's a commercial aspect. There's a lot of money involved, and it's hard to keep right some of the commercial values with the artistic integrity, where you still keep pushing the boundaries, trying to innovate, instead of just saying, hey, let's just make a bunch of watches for these guys, sell them at a huge price, So the watchmaking today, do you still see a lot of that? Do you think there's a lot of companies out there that are just putting watches for watches' sake instead of focusing in the art?
Yeah, well, that's what big brands are. Big brands, no matter how small they want you to believe, we're talking again in high tier watchmaking, above Rolex. Okay, that's where I live. Is you go all the way up the ladder. When people collect watches and they maybe become an attorney or a doctor and they buy their first watch, it's usually a Rolex, right? Mm-hmm. And then some of them find out there's stuff above that, and it's not just because it's expensive or it has diamonds, because what I do and what my friends do in independent, almost nobody puts any kind of diamonds on their watches. It's about the complexity of the mechanics. How hard is it dictates to the manufacturer, it dictates the price. It's not just a like supply and demand kind of thing. And that supply and demand thing is what's used in regular branding. I'm sorry, we can only make 100 of these. But in reality, they can just turn up their CNC machines and make 1,000. And it's the music analogy. It's the same thing. You have pop music, which is manufactured crap. And usually the average person doesn't realize that person doesn't even write their music. None of it. They're just a showpiece, right? It's producers and writers and everyone is behind the scenes, and their names are left off the product on purpose. Okay, so there's a lot of that in this industry as well. That's what I used to do. I used to be a ghost builder, same as a ghost writer. Okay, there's a lot of us that are independents. That's where we had our job. So if a big company, a company, let's say above the Rolex name, we don't name names, they produce a lot of watches. They want you to assume that there's three little guys on top of a Swiss mountain in a wood shed making them. It's like the Fiat Motor Company, okay? That's what it really looks like. But when they want to make a special series of 10 or 5 of something crazy, they can't stop all that. They would lose all their money. So they hire ghost builders, guys like someone like me. I have a speciality. Even though I can make all the parts of the watch, I'm very good at, let's say, making watch pinions and gears. A pinion is a small steel gear. A gear is a big brass gear they mate together. So say I'm that specialist. They hire me to do that. They hire another guy to do the main plates that hold all the jewels, and he's a specialist in that. And he has another guy that does another aspect of the winding mechanism. And you're all a team. You all come together, but nobody's name is allowed to be used. We're all ghost builders for the smaller series. And a lot of those people, my friends, and did what I did. As independent watchmaking got bigger and bigger and bigger, we branched out, eventually saved up enough money to get our own machines and start our own brand, because of the internet, we can reach directly to the collectors. And that's how all this kind of birthed and became this independent monster. So we don't have to adhere to what you were talking about, big brands, we're not looking to sell to the masses because we can't produce that kind of numbers anyway. I mean, I make 3 watches a year.
3 watches a year. Wow.
Yeah, that's all I need to make.
Wow.
It's art. I put everything I can. I make everything in it.
That's amazing.
I design everything. I'm the designer. I'm the creator. I'm the guy that took all these years to go to school for all these different. Each part of watchmaking is an industry. It's not just like you learn how to fix a watch. So I have to mess with annealing and metals and fire and how to take raw metals and turn it into the certain So some things are springs, they have to be elastic metal. Some things are hard, they have to be hardened. So that's like an industry in itself, like melting metal and melting gold, right? And then there's like 50 or 60 different industries that are involved in making one watch.
So it makes no difference that Switzerland is known as the world center for watchmaking. So you're in the States. It makes no difference that you're in the States because of, as you explained, you're completely above the market or the trends that may dictate where you get clients from all over the world.
Right. The hardest part of being here, or as independent watchmaking branches out all over the world, is just Japan and hopefully in your country now. The hardest part for me in the United States is there is no watch industry, meaning let's just for instance, the certain metal that I use in making a winding pinion, which is a gear, doesn't exist in this country. So they might have a distributor of that Swiss company that's taking molten metal and making this certain kind of shaft that I have to put in a lathe and turn by hand. It has to be a certain consistency of steel, certain kind of steel that they use all day long in their factories. But one company could use 50,000 pounds of this stuff a day making pinions on their automatic machines, right? I need to do it by hand. They might have a distributor here in the United States, and if I call them and say, here's what I need, this certain kind of metal, they'll be like, what is that? They don't even know what it is. And you say, you don't understand, like, you guys probably sell like $500 million worth of this stuff in Switzerland and Germany, right? And they're like, well, we don't import that. And then even if you can find some in Switzerland, you have to know people because there's minimum quantities to buy, because they don't want to deal with the little guy who's making 3 or 5 or 8 watches that only needs 5 little rods for already say that was $200 or $300 for what I would need. They want to sell you $23,000 worth of it. So there's what lies the problem once you leave Switzerland for everybody. So we were all friends behind the scenes through Instagram and other social media aspects, and we bulk buy, or somebody has them and they're doing a big project, and we try to just get what we need, being the small fish in the sea, because they don't even answer our emails. So that would be the struggle that someone who wanted to do what I do in your country and had the drive and credentials, that's their struggle too.
I would imagine. Yeah. No, Brazil is picking up. I mean, we have a few new brands that are starting to be independent. Obviously, in terms of numbers, I think they're not producing many watches. But Brazil doesn't have any heritage in the watchmaking. Although it's a very strong market, a lot of people here, a lot of risks that people can, sell watches to. When it comes to watchmaking, we never had any wars, that we were involved. Like I think the wars was such a huge part of watchmaking. And when you look at American brands like Waltham and other ones, Bulova, and they are fantastic during that time. So what do you think of when you compare, or when you look at the American watchmaking scene, not specifically independent, but as a whole, how do you think the watchmaking industry is going in your country?
We really don't have it's very similar to your country. Since the 50s, we don't really have anything. I've been trying to help bring some awareness to my country, but the pocket watch industry and all that was birthed because of the birth of the railroad. We needed to time the train so everybody didn't die. That's why they needed to be precise, right? Otherwise there'd be dead humans all over the railroad tracks everywhere. So ever since all those factories in Pennsylvania closed, like Waltham and all that, we really haven't had anything here. And that's what's beautiful about the whole independent industry is there can be watchmakers in your country who do this, because it's not about, and they can actually birth a whole industry there, because it's not about your heritage or whatever. You are representing your country, which is really cool, but it's more about your art and your skill at being a master, and presenting something to the world that the big brands can't do, because it would either be too hard, too costly, or the mechanisms per se, like in my timepiece, I make what's called a chronometer detent escapement. When you wind your watch, the wheels turn in one direction, right? You're pushing wheels to get to that wheel that's always going back and forth, or like in a grandfather clock, it's going back and forth. You have to change wheels that go in one direction to two directions. So what's in between to make that happen is called an escapement. It's a series of gears and levers and rubies and jewels. There was one of the most precise escapements ever developed was for ship's chronometer, so that they didn't sink and die and kill themselves. So it's too complicated to miniaturize for a wristwatch for a big company. But for an independent like me, who doesn't have to mass produce, I can make one of the world's most precise timekeepers that there are by miniaturizing a ship's chronometer into a wristwatch. And that's what's cool. You can do cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So you take inspiration from the old Swiss or even the English watchmakers from the day. You try to apply some of that in your watchmaking as well. I mean, you seem like an artist working with all your machines with your hands. That's just like they did back in the 8th, 16th, 17th century.
Right. Yeah. That's how. That's how Torian was birthed. Right. His birth just from some drawings on a napkin and like, can this shit actually work? And that's what my escapement is. That this guy Louis Richard in the 1800s, he never saw it miniaturized for a wristwatch. He had dreams that this thing would actually work, and it's just like drawings, and that's it. So there's a group of us that took about 3 years just to develop just these few little gears that are part of the massive watch. 3 years of our life just to bring it alive. That's what's cool. It's just like music. It's like crap. We got in the beginning of thrash metal, when we was making the first album, us and Metallica, they were sleeping on our rehearsal room floor eating like raw hot dogs at that point in time. We were living it like hungry. Like we got something. We know what we got. All we got to do is get in the studio and like do some hard work, and people are gonna love what we got because we love what we're doing. We know this is something it's a sound that's never been before. We know that because there's not even a guitar amplifier made that can get the sounds that are in our head through the speakers. It doesn't exist yet. I want more bass in my amp. It's got to be like more like a bass. But as soon as you turn the bass up on those amplifiers back then, it farted out. It went like, it wasn't tight, that tight when we played really fast, So we had we're not famous enough. How are we going to get like Jim Marshall, the English amp guy, to like how can we call him and tell him like, dude, make us an amp that the sound in our head, and that's the birthing of that, and that ambition and love of then the next step for us. We got into the studio. We found a manager to put up a little bit of money, and we're sitting there now listening back to all our music and Metallica and all of us about the same time going like, holy crap, when everyone hears this, like they're going to shit in their pants. Like, wow, it's like, it was a slow grind. And that's the same thing in watchmaking. Once a collector is that lawyer or doctor and works his way up to big name brands, up to the bigger brands. And he's at the end of collecting. He's a collector now. He's addicted. Like, it's worse than heroin. It's worse than Ferrari collecting. It's the same thing. He's a collector. What's next? And then they find us crazy ass independent guys all over the world who are just creating stuff that, like, it's that thrash metal for watchmaking stuff, and that's what's cool. So,
and where does it come from? Because I mean, you're obviously deep in the music, but I imagine that you have this concept of the importance of time and the importance of respecting timekeeping and all that throughout your life. But where does it come from? Why where does it come, all this passion, all this skill, all this interest, and all this drive to become the watchmaker you are today?
Well, you gotta have like OCD, compulsive disorders, which all guitarists have, right? You can't sit in a room and practice 10 hours a day, the same 9 notes over and over again. But your mother, when you're a little kid, wants to kill you, unless you have OCD. So you gotta somehow feed your OCD somewhere. Or you're gonna kill. I don't know what's gonna happen. So I fell into this. This is I'm third generation, So I was sitting on my grandfather's lap when I was a little kid in his jewelry store in the Catskill Mountains in New York, looking inside of like crazy watches as a little kid. So it was always inherently in me.
Yeah.
And I always fixed and repaired stuff my whole life since I was a little kid. I was the neighborhood where I didn't just fix my own stuff in my own house and my own broken stereos that my dad would bring home, but the whole neighborhood would bring over their TVs and all their shit to my room. So I'm a problem solver. I always built my own guitar amps, and work with the companies to do all that. So this applies to my humanness and my makeup very well.
Yeah. So what's your earliest, when you have to look back, what do you remember first? A watch with your grandfather or a guitar? What's the first memory when you compare them?
It's kind of like both was we're in my house, we're in my home, and my parents. My dad was a huge jazz fan, big band and jazz, and his hobby was collecting big, huge, massive home stereos. So he had big phase linear power amps and stuff and big speakers, and he's blasting like Dizzy Gillespie and Sinatra and Al Farlow. So that's Al Farlow was in my head before I played guitar. Stuff like that. And my mom was blasting opera, and my brother was playing bass. But then again, on the weekends we would go to our country house, and my grandfather, who was the jeweler, would show up, and then we'd go to his store. So that's all in me. I'm a cocktail of all of that.
Your brother's also a musician, right? I read that he's a bass player.
Oh, he played in Black Sabbath, Great White. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, fantastic. If we can talk about, because you mentioned that you grew up with both things, in your life, everything being fused together. Was Persistence of Time, that the Anthrax album, Persistence, was that like a brainchild you had? Was that something you wanted to explore musically, or was all these the concept of horology and timekeeping already you express them in different ways, or was that the first time that you really put it out there?
Well, as you can see, it's been around me, so it's going to come out through the music, and it did in numerous different places during the band's history, and everyone in the band knew I was crazy about timepieces and stuff like that. So touring with a big clock behind me was pretty cool. What's funny about that tour is there's actually a guy behind there. It's a big lever. Yeah, and he's literally like asking. That's like before that's really the old days. I shouldn't have gave that out. And I was hitting the head with that thing all the time. It was really heavy because I'd be like up there in front of the big clock, and I would like lean back like I was getting so into it, and then boom, I get clocked in the freaking head all the time, man. But yeah, time just followed me, and I think time is it's an incredible thing. We all live around it now. No one really pays attention to it too much. It has really been reduced to seconds. If the average tolerance we have now is 30 seconds, and we're flipping through stuff. And in my generation, it was quite different. We had the freedom of not having social media and not having to every 2 hours show somebody that I'm eating a piece of a shrimp or something. We had freedom to chill and create and lock ourselves in rooms to be whatever we were going to be, or whatever that passion was that we had. Even if someone had a regular job at a workplace, they always had a passion. Everyone has a passion when they come home, or most people do. And that freedom was, I think, much greater back in when I grew up. You really could lock yourself away and do your passion without having to kind of sit on your phone. So it's always followed and was embedded in my music and the other bands of my era. Whatever interests them was part of their music, and that's what independent thrash metal was, if you want to call it that, right? Because that music represented not just music and trying to feed the masses or the pop culture or pop music people. We were anti getting on the radio. We didn't want if they tried to put us on radio, we'd make them take it off radio. We were underground. It was more like a Grateful Dead thing where, you got to go find us because we fucking play. We're all friends. When we had a festival, we played Donington kind of festival back then, or outdoor festivals. All of us were all friends. But when the lights went down, and you always heard us say it was war and all that, it's not just like a thing to scream. Oh, it's war. It's war. It's what band is going to blow the other band off the stage. That's how serious we play. All of us. We don't not just guys who strum a little guitar like this. We don't mess around. One mistake in any of my friends' bands, and I was, we were all in a meeting. What you do, bro? I heard that one mistake. I mean, we didn't mess around. So that's how serious that music is, and that's how serious what this is. If you don't have that head, being a watchmaker is not for you, because you can work weeks, if not months, on one little part, and then one slip, and that part of your life is gone because that part's gone. There's no room for error in watchmaking. There's some similarities, right? There's zero room for error. You can't have cumulative. That shit looks good, man. It's good enough, that part. Yeah, this is cool, man. If the wheel looks almost round, yeah, man. It's good enough, man. Let's put it in there. It's cumulative, so it won't work just like a song. Just like when you play live, if one guy's messing up and then the second guy messes up, it's all cumulative, and then it sounds like one big mess. It's the same thing. So the correlation is very good if you're a musician to fall into this field.
Absolutely. And yeah, I totally agree as well. What you said, social media. I think people today are just so hungry for clicks and likes and stuff. I think maybe the music industry has been more affected than the watchmaking industry in a way, because regardless of some of the core values of watchmaking, regardless if we're talking about commercial or independent like yourself, there's certain shared core values which I think are still respected. Unfortunately, maybe the music scene today has changed a bit. So maybe for you, we're just natural progression. Can I put it that way? Turning, stop making music full time and becoming a full time watchmaker. Was that just? But people probably thought you were crazy back then. Like, what the hell are you doing, man? Because you don't ever see musicians leaving the music industry.
Right. Yeah. No, that was very difficult because, to be honest, what was very difficult was I was on a tour bus, starting when I was like 13. So I didn't know what. Yeah, I mean, I started the band Overkill as well, with Rob and Dee Dee and Bliss. So that's like, if you want to talk how thrash metal got started, people don't even realize, like, that's how far back I go. That's like, what, 1981? It's before any of the other bands even existed. That's the music that was placed in me to exhale to the world. So to be in that world for so long and living on a tour bus in an alternate universe, and then all of a sudden, when I did leave, I just kind of spent a couple of years just like looking around. Like every morning I'd see people like leaving their houses and their cars, and I'm like, what's going on? Like an alien's coming, like what? And they're like, oh crap, that's what people do, like it really was that much of a culture shock for me. Like, oh, did I really do the right thing? But no, I had been on a tour bus a very long time. I had 2 children at that point, and I was married, and no one in my band was, and they didn't. They were in a different part of their life than I was in my life, and my children, were screaming in the hallway, like, when I had to go on tour, Daddy, please don't go, and that kind of stuff. And our music is not, again, pop music where you go out, or country music, and you go out for 3 weeks and come home. I mean, we would go to Europe for 3.5 months. I'd maybe come home for a week while our gear would go to South America. And then I'd be gone for, a month there. The gear goes to the Far East. Maybe I'm home for a week, and then 2 months over there. And then it starts all over again. I'm never home, ever. Never, ever, ever. So that it becomes very difficult to have a family who can't be on the road with you after you have children. So it's an impossibility, basically. So I had to make a decision back then. And so I decided to leave. And we left on wonderful, great terms with the guys and go to school. And I immediately, I think the next week, enrolled in the Bulliver School of Watchmaking for a 4-year school here in America.
Wow, fantastic. And how was your time in Switzerland studying watchmaking? Was that, imagine, quite a learning process?
Yeah.
Was all the background from your musical years, did that help you to be creative and confident in yourself? I'd imagine, doing your own thing for so many years.
Right. Well, to get into the school in Switzerland back then, they didn't really. There's only one school, and you had to get in by scholarship. They choose about six people every 3 years. When they choose one from each continent that is available to them, and you have had to have gone to a previous 4-year school and then done many years or a few years at least of apprenticeship. That they know that if they invest in you to learn complicated watches, because there's a shortage for complication people, meaning crazy mechanisms. You can train people, let's say, to do basic timepieces, to tell the time. But once you get into tourbillons and stuff like that, even the Swiss companies, they don't have enough watchmakers that can do that. It's crazy mechanic. So yeah, it was really awesome, because you think in your mind it's one way until you get there and you realize, like I was saying earlier, that you go visit one company and you're like, wow, I thought it was 3 guys in a shed. It's not. It's like, did they drop us off at BMW? You know what I mean? Like, you're like, whoa, like this is crazy. But the school is, unbelievable. And I was taught by the gentleman, Antoine Simonet, who created the curriculum for the WOSTEP schools. There was no other schools around the world at all back then called WOSTEP. You had to go to that one school and get the scholarship. And then it's 24 hours a day, you get a key. And after school hours, you can apply yourself as you wish. And the curriculum is whoever is the fastest guy leading the class, you got to catch up to him. So it's pretty crazy.
Wow.
And so it's really in depth, and it's, they have the best machines, and it's backed by the Swiss government to create these people, because no matter where you're from, they hope that you will stay in Switzerland to go work at one of the companies to help the shortage. So it's very intense, and most people, activists don't leave Switzerland. Most of my friends are still over there. I came back. I had a family again.
Do you still go to Switzerland every now and again to check on technologies or trends that they're having coming up?
Yeah. But again, we have the internet, so we're all connected pretty much. But for me, luckily, my metal background was well received, because watchmakers outside of Switzerland are viewed as just crappy. No matter where you're from, no matter how you're trained or whatever, you're just not Swiss, right? It's just kind of a thing. But because there's so many people who love the music we all created called thrash metal, it's most of the watchmakers, even working on some of the craziest watches in the world, I would go either work in those rooms. They're like, rooms, there's no pictures of those rooms. It's all secret shit, They're all got like their earbuds in, like blasting Slayer, working on like $1 million complicated watch, and there's parts everywhere, and it's like Angel of Death, and I'm like, the first time I saw it, I'm like, whoa. So that gained me access, because I'm viewed as being Swiss because I went to that school. Those credentials stamp me as one of them. It's very rare to have those credentials where you actually went to Switzerland and in Neuchâtel and were trained at WOSTEP in Neuchâtel by the course's creator. So these are the Kari Voutilainens, Sarpaneva, all my friends. You know, we all came through about the same time, within a year or two.
Wow.
So it's really cool, man. It's really cool to find out like how many metalheads there are, you know. And in the weirdest industry, right? You would think like watchmaking now, it's like listen to like Burt Bacharach or something, you know, like, you know, maybe they're pushing the Bee Gees, you know, or something like, you know what I mean? But you wouldn't think they're like blasting, you know, metal, right?
That's awesome.
They are. They look in there. You pull out their watchmaking drill. Like, we didn't want to say anything, Spitz, man. We know you want to be quiet. We didn't, you know, but come over here. And you pull out their drawer, and it's all like CDs. It's all metal CDs, you know. And they're like, yeah, you know. I'm like, all right, cool. Now I know why you guys let me in here. So it's cool. It's cool. Metal is just everywhere.
Last few questions. I promise you. I'll leave you alone. And when you look back at, you know, talk about music again, just to make some correlations, and I know other bands have tried to talk about time and write about time. Do you think that's something that is embedded in music and is well represented? Do you think there are music songs that can truly represent the concept of time and the value, importance that we should give time?
Yeah, I mean, it's so relevant. We only have so much time. When we're young, and we are, say, for instance, myself, when I was locking myself in my room trying to become, you know, what I thought would be like an incredible guitar player and practicing endless hours, which never stopped. You know, you only have so much time in that day before this, you know, your mom says it's dinner time, or there's so much time after school, or you don't have enough time, so you cut out of class to come home to practice. There's some more time. Everything is revolving around that time. As you get older, in my age, the time starts ticking down. You start actually thinking, how much time do I have left? Because a lot of my friends, most of them are dead. You know, they died of, they drank too much when we were kids. They didn't realize what they were doing to their body, or they ate shitty, you know, and it was just inherent in their DNA. You know, there's certain diseases that were in the family, whatever it is. As you get older, now the time is ticking down. So everything, we only got so much time here. Is time, how are you going to use your time? Is your time going to be to benefit, come to a certain point in your life where you want to help others with your time? Or are you a selfish piece of crap and you just want to self-serve yourself with your time? I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Time revolves around everything we do. I mean, look, we even redid the song Got the Time from Joe Jackson, and it's the first heavy metal song that's playing on another planet with NASA on planet Mars. So even when we did that, we picked a song that's based around time. We only have so much time when we toured to get on stage. And if you're over by 1 minute and playing Madison Square Garden, you got to pay all the union guys triple time. So at midnight, you're stopping. Yeah.
You still play?
I can't, bro. I tried. I did a little thing with one of my really great longtime friends, Scott Stapp from the band Creed, had asked me to come out to his house. I don't know how many years ago, and I jumped on stage with him a few times. Truthfully, it hurts. It's because I have an all-in or all-out personality, as you can see, right? I'm either all in and I'm going to take over a couple planets, or I'm all in. I'm going to, make some masterpiece timepieces that nobody else possibly, or very few people can make. If I pick up my guitar, I get that same feeling where, why am I sitting on my couch when I can play like this, or create like this, or write like this? So I have to keep it locked up, because I'll end up stopping this and dream that I can again, go back to music. And music has changed considerably for me, as far as I can see from an outsider's point of view. It's not a job I would push on my children. The industry has changed. There's no more record stores to buy records. There's no royalties. There's no radio. There's no do it for fun. Yeah, but trying to make a living out of it in this day and age would be very difficult.
Yeah. What about watches? Do you collect watches? Do you buy watches that you like, that you see around, or you no need for that?
No, I don't even wear a watch. It's kind of the same as my music. After I created it, I don't want to hear it. I have to play it live, which is a whole different thing, right? Because you would feed off the audience and have the best time of your life. That time on stage, I can't even begin to explain to someone who's never experienced it. It's beyond euphoria. It's beyond anything that I can put into human words. It's that love and interaction with a heavy metal audience. They don't sit and look at a playbook or something, playbill, like, you know what I mean? It's completely interactive to the point where they want to be. Everyone in the audience back then was in the band. That's what I try to kind of reiterate to everybody. When people would say, "I'm a fan of your music," no, you're not, and they would kind of get insulted a little bit because sometimes they didn't give me a chance to explain. But I felt that, what's the reason you want to get so far to the front of the crowd and then get on the stage, not to hug me, just to be on stage, right? They just jump up and down, want to be on stage, because everyone feels like they are in the band and that kind of music. And that's what we always wanted to be. I don't want to be a rock star or anything like that. It's like we're all one. So it's a one unit thing. And that's what we do here. The same kind of thing. The collectors have that same mindset. Most of them are metalheads too. So it transcends to that same mindset, where the collectors are all in, just like you would be all into music, and they're geeked out by the mechanisms that we all create, and that I create, and they're really kind of blown away. Like our watches are our songs, in independent watchmaking. If you go to look at a few Japanese guys, for instance, I'll bring up, and their art and their mechanics. It represents a lot of their country and their heritage. If they were musicians, it's the same guy. They'd be writing songs the same way they're creating their independent timepiece. So it's the same kind of thing. So I get that same food in this industry. And it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be.